All right. That's about as long as we can go. Can't play the full 6 minutes, just too long of an intro. Need to get me a new AI one, but here we are for now. Welcome, Nathan, my friend. Good to have you back.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you. And you, my friend, are quite the impressive backyard garage electrical engineering scientific mind and developer, and you've been doing so much, and um, it's all applicable to everything the rest of us are doing. And I myself have been delving lately into the electron flow and the electrical engineering side more of things, and the electrical breakdown of matter, especially in my electrolysis reactions. And it all ties in together, and there's so much to it. And you're a lot further along on other aspects of understanding charged particle density, the flow, the fields, the field flow and interactions of it, and engineering it. So I have a lot of questions trying to understand what I'm looking at and what I'm doing. So I'm turning to you now, and um, specifically with Tesla coils and the fields that they form and interact with each other, and how you've been developing that, and then like the one wire circuit between them. And do you want to just explain a bit of what you're doing and what you figured out so far?
So basically, let's just start with the simple things. If you're going to have an amp and a volt, you're going to have a resonance to it, just some kind of frequency, right? So what I found is it's easy if you put something in resonance to create other things in resonance with it. So everything out there works that way. So no matter what it is, whether it's a simple transformer or whether it's another Tesla coil, all you have to do is resonate at the correct frequency. Now, if you create an item that has more than one frequency, which has a ring, you're able to hit any one of those values on that ring and turn that coil on. You have to have no primary to it. It just has to be a winding of wire. That's it. It's got to match the resonance frequency. So whether it's a tuning fork turning on a transformer or my Tesla coil turning on a tuning fork, it really makes no difference. It's just about the resonance frequency. It must produce a ring. As soon as it produces the ring, you're in. You're in the game now. Now you can turn things on. That's the whole scientific aspect to it. So when you do that, you're not just turning it on in order to get a light bulb to light. You're producing plasma for it. And what happens is in a secondary that's not attached to your primary running circuit is you get a bipolar aspect to it, a null zone in the center. You get a vortex coming out the top and a vortex coming out the bottom. It's very important that you remember that, because it means that you're not just building something to turn something on. You're making a ring in order to pull the vortex into the coil. You're pulling the energy from the room into the coil itself in order to produce that plasma. Now, that can be used as anything you want it to be used as long as you do not break the resonance frequency of it. The second that you break it is the second it stops working. So let's move that to a practical application. If I wanted to use a bit, and it's basically just a toroid, ferrite core, and I wanted to produce energy without it knowing that I'm pulling energy from it. Now I run the wire in, it goes around the toroid and it comes back to the negative on your battery, right? Now I'm going to take in two. I'm going to bring one in. Say the first one's 22 turns on this side. This one over here is 11. Then I go 11 on the next one, right? Well, as it sees it, if this one over here that your primary runner resonates at the same frequency as these two equal, which means they're in halves, so that when those equal out, this will not see this. It will basically ring it, and then the ring itself turns the other one on, and then you can pull the energy and use it while the other one just simply returns back to the battery. It's an over unity circuit, which is based on resonance.
My God, what you just explained is the key of Tesla's technology, the ringing, the resonant frequencies, the multiple. You said you have to have the multiple resonant frequencies with, or a cup resonance. So two multiple.
It's just got to create the ring. One by itself doesn't create the ring that well.
Yeah, so multiple coils of resonating, essentially.
So basically, you have a primary that's basically working on frequency. You think it's all volts and amps. It's not. It's that frequency that's the most important. That's what's turning on your air core secondary in your Tesla coil, right? So it rings. This one rings back. This one rings. This one rings back, right? And it just goes for that. People see it like it goes like this, right? It's real simple. Now you understand why a secondary by itself becomes a bipolar one, because you're picking up primary and secondary. They're both the same ring. Now you're exposing that by showing both. Now you're able to pull it. So if you simply said, all right, I'm going to take these two sides of my bipolar now, secondary by itself, all I have to do is create a Y spark gap. Two on one side, one coming into it. Now anything I have on this side, I can pull out. It's now my energy for free. All of it. I don't have to share it. It's basically giving it to me. So I can now take it out. Or you can make a more traditional bit. Now, you can still do it with generators. It just takes longer and they spin and it sucks to deal with everything that comes with it. Or you can just make it solid state, man, and have a good day. In about 20 minutes, you got yourself a nice transformer that is the Tesla coil ringer that you see in his patent. See, a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's a secondary coil. Jarvis and I went over this together, and it's that ringer that is the bit. That's the part of over unity you have to see. You have to be able to pull from it while it's still running the main circuit. And most of the things go back to the battery. So it's basically a mirror. Here on one side of the mirror, you know what I mean, is your starter. Here on this side of the mirror is your amount of energy you can pull out of it. It's pretty simple once you get it down. The harder part is now you're going to start using geometry. Once you start getting to geometry, man, now we can create some cool stuff. So I was talking today earlier, if I told you to look at a beehive, right? What would you tell me, Bernie? What does it look like?
It is in total resonance, actually. It's like the hexagonal building that's it's in a lattice, like a super lattice formation that they make it. It's like a superstructure, essentially.
Okay, so one of the things that it does as well is it tapers in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that? So every single one of those hexagons tapers in, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So if I were to put a winding on the outside of that, what happens naturally to that?
You'd get some charge, I would
So
think.
hold on. A ring works by going back and forth and back and forth. But it doesn't actually do that except for on your oscilloscope. It goes like this.
A vortex. Okay.
It's a natural vortex at that point. You just set that up in the right way and you're pulling energy into it by creating the ability for a vortex to form. Now you start looking at what they're doing by layering in thin amounts of, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the word. Basically, it's a thin membrane, Every time they do that and they put another one under it, it creates a resonating chamber inside of it. Now, think about this. I want to create a singularity. How do I want to do it? I'm going to take that same hexagonal shape. I'm going to take the same cone it gave with me. And now I'm going to wind my coil based on that cone. And I'm going to put them at different directions from each other. And now I'm going to create it where one goes off, then the other one. One goes off, and then the other one, right? So we constantly want it repeating. In the center, I will create a singularity, which is basically your plasmoid. And it will allow you to put a monster amount of energy into it. That's the understanding of that whole thing. They only build them in like halves. There's not too many big circular ones. When you get to them, they're hot as heck. And they have a ton of energy coming out of them. So there's an understanding here of geometry in coils as well. Sean does it in his coil. So if you wrap a single Tesla coil that's straight up and down with the same amount of windings as you do a one that's a pyramid shape, right? What happens?
The same amount of windings is key. Does it stay in resonance, or is it different because of the geometry?
So it pulls off twice the energy because it's in the geometry.
Okay.
Again, why? Because, like I said, it vortexes the cone. Because it's vortexing the cone, it's hitting the harmonics of it. Now, in that geometry, if you change it to get a little bit more here, a little bit less here, now you're going to start hitting the harmonics all the way. So when you see that ring, it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, just like this, right? Gotcha. Now you're starting to hit every single one of them as you're doing your vortex, right? Every time you hit it, it's a multiplier. So think of it that way. You're only getting 2 times right now, but once you start to put the sacred geometry in there and do it right, guess what? It's time to amplify the living daylights out of this thing. Now, Tesla did it like this. He put 2 of them together, pointing towards each other, one cone down, one cone up. What happens? Once you do that and force the energy together, it spans out this way. Because the Tesla coil is longitudinal, okay? That means that the energy that comes out of it when it hits together is going to go transverse on you. Now you're going to get a massive amount of energy. It's every time you run your Tesla coil, you're dropping the rock in the pond. But you're not just dropping it. You're picking it back up. Then you're going to drop it again. Then you're picking it back up and dropping it again. See, that's your spring right there. It's your longitudinal spring. Your waves, are your transverse. So it comes out, right? But the waves come out at a certain distance from each other. See, the Tesla coil itself is scalar. So it's always going to build out, drop off, build out, drop off, and keep going. It's a scalar energy because it's radiant. When I say radiant, it is literally radiation. And it's just a low-level radiation. Once you understand that that's not the same energy you're putting into it, and that you've already changed the field, now you can start to understand why one field can hold in another. Because they're different types of energy altogether. It has nothing to do now with your magnetic core that you think it does. That's why understanding that it came out of frequency instead of magnetics or, volts and amps, now you start to understand it's building something different. So now when you add temperature to that, this is where it blows your mind, okay? When you decide to add temperature to this, if I use a static field, it's still in the magnetic field family, okay? It goes from one side to another, from a massive magnetic field to a static electric field on the other side. It's still in the same family. Now, what you want to do is bring up the static field. Then you want to take a cold radiant field, which basically means you're going to put a rod down the center of your Tesla coil and you're going to force that scalar wave to build inside that rod. Now you're pushing it in. You don't want heat. Go ahead.
I suspect what you are talking about is directly related to magnetic flow and currents, and like that this is the engineering side that is completely oblivious to modern day electrical engineering, yet it's like 3/4 of the actual like electrical or charged particle motion and forces that are at play, right? Like that.
If Lorenz had this, then his whole theory would be proven right. It is the opposite side of standard magnetics that they teach you. That's what you're dealing with here. You're looking for a radiant field, which basically means the magnet will not interact with it. It will not make that same energy that you produce as you swing that magnet around. Doesn't react with this. It's different. It's just completely different. It's like two ships in the night. You know what I mean? They don't do the same thing. It's what allows you to break Lenz's law. So as soon as you pull it where it can't create heat, you break Lenz's law. Lenz's law is based on heat. That magnetic field you're getting is heat.
You have cold electricity right there. That's where you get the cold electricity.
Because it's room temperature and below. Yeah, so
and
it's more efficient because it has zero losses.
It doesn't have resistance in the flow. That's where the heat loss is, and that's where the majority of electrical charge is lost and energy is lost in the transition to heat. So when you're right, so that is the right there you have identified. That is the crucial mistake, whether intentionally or unintentional at the time, but intentionally kept ever since in our electrical grid engineering aspects, because they're like, oh, we need to use less energy. Oh, we're dying. And it's like, no, right there, if you re-engineer that one aspect, it's like electrical current use goes down by like probably at least 90, but I'm guessing like a 99 or even more like percent in like the flow and the waste of the lost energy from the friction or the resistance into heat, right? So it's like you take all of that out, and if everything was just based and engineered and built off of this cold current, the cold electrical charge flow, most devices, especially like computers, electronics, they all work off of that sort of energy. And that I believe like the DC powered motors can also work off of that. So it's like you don't need to get for that work the amperage, the heat, the hot electrical flow and movement that it goes along with it, and which requires so much more energy and waste, right?
Well, I think all the computers still work on hot electricity. Doesn't. No, what we're looking at here is any overheating device.
And stuff. Yeah, they are. But could they be engineered on coal? I don't know.
Oh, you could. It doesn't like to build out that way. So you got to understand what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with a radiant field. It doesn't build out like a magnetic field. It builds out like gas. So as you're sitting here, you are literally going to have to, how do I say this? Take your magnetic field, take it in the lowest form, which is static. Take your radiant field in as cold as you can get it. Force them to go together. Force them to create plasma. That's the whole goal of having this. So that right there is your anti-gravity field. So that's not what they really teach you. They teach you.
You said as cold as possible, too, right? And in outer space or whatever it is, it's cold as F, so that this function like exponentially increases once you're out in the so-called vacuum of space or whatever. That's not what it is, though. But
Yeah, but you got to understand, it's not forcing cold into it. It when you're dealing with something like a 0 point energy coil, it's not forcing the cold in. You can't take liquid nitrogen and cool it down like you can a magnet. It doesn't work that way. It's the energy of the room pulling into it that takes the room temperature energy that brings down
yes,
that brings down and cools it.
And so that is such
it's the
a crucial
effect.
aspect of energy engineering and magnetism and the flow of heat energy radiation through, and that's not what is at all understood, and yet it is the core part of both temperature flow as well as magnetism. And like that, magnets are magnetic fields, and magnets, the hotter you get, the weaker the magnetic field, right? The colder it gets, the stronger. And then it went through this endothermic reaction that is a magnetic like energy reaction, and that's where the heat energy, temperature energy count from the environment transfers in through the magnetic field of something. It's that's like,
see, the thing is, you don't even really want to use the total magnetic field. You want to use the static portion. So let me just explain this for people who do not know the scale. On one side, you're going to get highly magnetic, which means your amperage is really high and your voltage is really low. On the other side, you're going to get static, which means that your voltage is really high, but your amperage is really low, right? Do you know what the difference in between it is, Bernie? It's simply the frequency. You see, when your amps are really high, your frequency is really low. But when your frequency is really high, your voltage is really high. See, and it works both ways. You can make this thing work however you want to make it work, the flow between the two. And if you don't understand that scale and how it works back and forth, this whole concept is going to be hard to deal with, because you have to be able to transverse from a simply magnetic field to a static electricity field. And you have to be able to do it by simply controlling two things. You need your frequency, and then you're going to need your duration cycle. Your duration cycle slows down the circuit so that your amps pick up because of the heat. See, a lot of people don't understand this. If you take a Tesla coil, right, and you open it top to bottom, it goes about 4 feet. Put a cap on the top and bottom of it. It'll go over 5 feet. Why? Because I created heat in between that chamber. I closed it off. Now it pushes further. What happens when I put sand in it? Well, as that sand heats up, we go further. We no longer are creating plasma out of this thing. We're creating a big radiant field. There's a big difference in understanding how that scale works. So when I tell you there's a temperature differential, if I wanted to create the outside of the coil at room temperature, but the inside I want colder, I just put a negative radiant field in the center and then a regular magnetic field on the outside. Now I can control the temperature and make it swirl all day long. All day, get colder. We can sit here and we can put our little temperature gun on it and watch it drop in the room.
We need to do that, and we need to engineer that aspect. And that, so the term free energy is often massively misused and misunderstood, but when actually truly understood and applied into the engineering, this is why I'm bringing up like the crucial part of the transfer of energy of the surrounding environment, of the temperature into the magnetic field of it. And that right there, once properly understood and utilized and like transferred in from the magnetic field and flow into the electrical field and flow of the engineering, it's like you'll be able to get unlimited free energy from the environment by pulling in the radiant energy, by creating this vortex of sucking the hotter energy into the cooling of the magnetic field flow of it, and just being powered off of that, right? And that was essentially what Tesla was doing, and what the atmospheric electricity sort of thing was a part of. And the how far off the current AC grid system and our current technology of electricity compared to what it could be and should be, and is like intentionally kept away from, is that we've removed 99% of energy from being able to be transferred into a usable electrical energy, right? And that it's all around. It's just like they've intentionally been like, no, you can't touch that or use that or try to convert that energy, even though it's right there and available. And the law says that you can't destroy energy, you can only convert it from one to another. That's anything that's an open system that's taking energy from the environment into the system and using that and creating the differential and flow. That's your free electrical energy from
Well,
the
they also tell you in the same physics that energy cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. And in that, they screwed themselves, because then what are you doing? Well, you're basically just creating an environment for a vortex to form, aren't you? You're not making the energy, you're creating the environment. They just told you that answer as soon as they told you that, right? Because if you can't create it, why are you working so hard? All you need to do is create the vortex. Now you just pull the energy in. It's free. Now, what they also told you was, if we live in a sea of energy, guess what? Now I can pull it all day long. And over unity is no longer about the device you're working on. It's about the environment you're in. You see, that whole law right there, they screwed themselves over in physics and not understanding it properly. You see, you can take all the energy from the world and pull it in right through a vortex. It's that simple. That's all you have to do. You know, if you simply put up a antenna and then you put a rod into the ground, you can pull energy from both sides. All you got to do is create the pump. Tesla coil's a pump. All you got to do is create it. And then we're in business. You know what I mean? I could put a Tesla coil right on top of a rod in the ground, and it'll produce energy. That's it.
And to circle back to the very start of your presentation, what you're talking about is the key is getting them to ring in a system that's in harmonic resonance with itself. And therefore, you're not having to connect them physically and pump that electrical flow by solid connection to them. They're just already in that harmonic resonance and working together and connected through, well, frequency and resonance, and that getting them to ring. And that is, I guess, the part that we don't understand, that is intentionally lost. Like, can you get more into explaining that aspect of it, please?
Well, okay. So there's two sides and theories about this. One, you can think it runs through the air. Two, it can run right through the ground. See, this is a missing aspect of it. Once you make it a radiant energy, it's game over. You can put it right into the ground. And now the ground itself, if you put it into the water table, now the water itself becomes electrified. Now you can transfer that energy anywhere. You see, that's the point here. I did an experiment in my backyard with a 10-foot by 10-foot pond. I could take my Tesla coil, run the rod down the center, throw the rod right into the water. On the other side of that 10-foot pond, it lights up. I could just shove light bulbs right into the ground. And it lights up better from the ground, because now I can pull the energy of the ground, because it's negative energy below our feet. So Sean did a coil, and he was pulling the negative on it, right? Normally, when you do something like that, if you put the ground up next to it, you get the thing going shooting towards the ground, right? The energy shoots towards the ground so it could be grounded out. Because he had a negative coil, the energy was coming from the ground to the coil, and not in little bits either. Big white sparks with plenty of amperage in them from the ground to the coil, not the other way around. It's a massive difference. You could pull that energy right out of the ground. You just have to have a pump and the right way to make it move to pump it out of the ground.
See, that is key. And this is one of the things I wanted to get out of you tonight that I was pondering for the last couple of days. And I was taking deconstructing our electrical grid and electrical flow and AC and DC and ground, and then also the atmospheric differential pressure from above and static charge, and that's the two key parts that are missing and crucial and that have intentionally been taken out of our AC electrical grid system and technology is how to utilize and maximize and engineer the atmospheric differential from the ion and ion field and density and the ground frequency density and charge and how it works, and putting that into usable electrical current flow, and that it's.
But think about it. You got a massive spark coming out of the ground, right? Now, all you need to do is put a capacitor in between it, divert it with a capacitor, and start putting more capacitors there. And it's just storage and storage and storage. That's it. Let me throw a curveball to you. So now take just a coil of winding. Just spare winding, you wound your Tesla coil off, you got a 5-foot spool. Now run that as your ground. Guess what? The energy still comes out of it towards the Tesla coil. You see, it's a misnomer to think all of the time that energy isn't all around it. It's where you allow the vortex to be created, it'll pull from it. You see, that winding itself just wound around that one bobbin, right? Well, the vortex created right above it and right below it in order to put the energy into it to pull towards that Tesla coil. You see, that should drive anyone nuts. It's not connected to anything. It's just a spool of wire. Why would it have so much energy in it? Well, now you get to the understanding. You're not building energy. You're pulling it from the environment.
Yes, right. And and the next step is that you build a bunch of those, and then we're learning how to actually engineer and utilize and create the flow and the maximization of this new energy into usable circuits that then can have the resistance and be run our equipment, right? It's that
just break the symmetry twice. Full bridge rectifier twice. When you're in high frequency, make sure you have high frequency diodes. If you want more amperage in that, put slow moving diodes in there, and it'll create more amps because it'll slow it down. Basically, just like a natural, what do you want to call it? Duty cycle. It's a natural duty cycle when you put in slower ones. So then the amperage will go up and the voltage will go down. But then when you put in high frequency diodes, the voltage goes through the roof and it just flows, and you'll be able to fill caps. Now, however you want to do it, Bernie, we can do both. We can hook them back together and create voltage and amperage. It's beautiful, man. That's something you always wanted. The high amount of volts and the high amount of amps in the end, it's just going to be a mix. You can't break that law.
See, and these are the crucial things that we are going to be doing together this summer, because I want to make a couple circuits, systems, and I guess 2 or three, probably three, because it's like I'll do two different Tesla coil sets that like get them ringing and in resonance, but like with three or four or more coils per system of like the same resonance, so the same size or whatever, so that like have there'll be two grids, and that I want to try like you're doing with like the one wire between them and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that so you have two parallel. Ooh, so the second one would be a fit like one half, right? So it'll be or
So hold on. There's two ways to look at this. There's a hot side that will structure the water. There's a cold side that removes the structure from the water.
so
Now, which one do you want?
we'll need three then.
So it breaks it either way. So you may not know this, but as soon as you put the positive and negative in there, you're structuring that water.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I can demonstrate. I have thousands of different pictures of examples.
Oh, the ice cube.
Yes, that, for sure.
Oh, and so the negative on the Tesla coil, by the way, putting the rod down the center will break that structure. It takes like, if you consider it like a pipe, you're creating the pipe with the positive. I'm expanding the pipe with the negative. That's the way it works.
Yeah, and so another aspect I want to test is different like ferrite or magnetic like cores, but also potentially like maybe even donuts, like two Tesla coils that are in resonance but really close together, and then like a iron or like ferromagnetic core connecting them, like donut connecting them, sort of thing. And then so it's essentially like creating a transformer with the Tesla coils, and then having a couple of them, like so that you have like 4 or 5 of these systems, and then being able to engineer the one wire system or circuit that's between them, and then do a second additional identical but either half the size coils of the same amount. So you got 2 parallel circuits of this. And
you want a MIG. You're describing a MIG, you know that, right?
A what?
A MIG. Yeah, MEG.
Oh,
MIG.
okay.
So, what was it, Tom Byron or Tom something? I don't remember the name. Sorry, Brit. Anyway, he describes a MIG, and someone will tell me his name. Anyway, he describes a MIG, and it's basically building a vortex inside of an iron core transformer with both sides being resonantly equal to each other on both windings. But then you can tap into it with other windings at quarter or half the value to each one of them. Bearden is the one that I believe it. Yeah. So anyway, that's the MIG. That's what you're wanting to do.
Well, that's what I like figured out in my mind and just like doing electrical like over the last couple of days, and that like, but that you have 2 of them, and then but on a larger scale in the room, like the size that you're doing, sort of thing, and like then making a circuits, 2 parallel circuits out of them.
I mean, we're trying to power a house with this thing. That's a big thing, man.
Oh,
These things are like 12 inches long for my smallest one, and then like 2 feet for a bigger one.
Oh, yes, sir. And it's like I'd probably do it where I'd set them up where in like parallel, where it's like the bigger ones would be on the ground, and then I'd try to put the smaller ones like on the roof or like directly above them, sort of thing, and like kind of create like the parallel circuits, and then be able to run a whole bunch of other like further.
I'll be honest with you, Bernie. Pick a frequency you like. Okay. In the kilohertz, pick a frequency you like. It just to make it a reasonable size coil, because we start getting into regular hertz frequencies, it's going to be quite big.
So that this is the next step, and the whole purpose of it is so that you have like the two of them, and that, like you're saying, you have them ringing so that you have a couple different them in resonance with a couple others, and then also have taking this experiment purpose to the next level is some of the vortex coils, and then getting them in the same system and in ringing frequency. And then it's like you've got this grid and this system, and that from there it's like should be able to power a lot of plasma stuff, because you'd be having a huge field and then a grid out of it, and be able to experiment and use and like finally engineer cold currents and like flow and the field of it all, and understanding like
Now, let me tell you the downside of energy in the air, because we didn't get to discuss it. As soon as you put this thing in resonance and you're at 20 volts, right? And then the secondary coil goes off, you're going to have to drop your voltage. You will not be able to stand in that room. All the metal in that room gets hot. It is now RF hot, flat out. Everything. So as soon as you touch it, it burns your skin. You have to reduce the amount of energy you put into it, because again, you're now playing with the environment of your room. You're not just playing with this coil. As soon as you start putting one or two in resonance, you're now playing with the environment of your room. So everything around you, you're going to be burning your fingers quite a bit. Okay.
So I would be grounding those to salt water, like jars and buckets and stuff, and that's a whole.
You're going to walk around glowing, is what you're going to do.
Well, but designing it to also, I'm intending to start engineering, designing, and using a lot of saltwater battery aspects of into these circuits and purposes of it. And it's like you were showing going a bit into it there with what you're doing, and I just want to take that to the next level, because it's already so heavily involved with my own engineering of actual doing saltwater batteries and the structured water batteries, and taking them to like the third and fourth generation stuff, because that's literally what China's doing, and like making breakthroughs of like batteries that last forever and like all this different shit. And it's like there's like new ones coming out every day, and it's actually really easy to do in principle. It's just like you got to make a whole bunch of really, really small stuff, but to do like the usable ones that are like in inches or centimeter parts, where you have like hundreds of pieces or thousands sort of thing, as opposed to like the micro ones with tens of thousands or millions of whatnot, that's where you get to your very small nano or solid state stuff. But anyways, there's so much to it, and it's so practical, easy, and cheap to do. And it's like original electricity with the Leyden jars, and that is something we need to do together, is Leyden jar development of battery properties, because it's like it's electrical ionic charge-ish, isn't it, sort of thing? Like
you want basically a saltwater battery inside of a Leyden jar with a aluminum on the outside is basically what you're looking for. And then we'll just pull the energy between the inside and outside.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, that's pretty easy, because as soon as you do your reaction, you probably already know this, you don't have to put energy into it. If you can get a saltwater reaction out of it.
I've designed like to like third or fourth generations now, these like sealed generators where the reaction's steady going on for like a couple of years straight. And it's like, yeah, it's like they need to be utilized and developed and power things.
Well, See, in salt breaks down and reforms. It breaks down and reforms. It just all depends on time, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know why people don't understand this. Salt is just a crystal. And if you take a different crystal and you put it in water, it still produces energy and it produces frequencies out of it. Now, frequencies, not one frequency. It's like 6. Depending on the geometry structure of that crystal, you're going to get that many frequencies out of it. But it's a ring, it's a predictable thing. So if you pull one frequency, just understand that quarter, half, all the way down, you know what I mean? A third, an eighth, all of it is in there. And then now you can learn how to turn one of those things on. All you got to do is hit all the right frequencies, or should I say, in a hexagon shape, each one of the oxygen molecules itself represents a frequency in that chain. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you have the whole chain, right? Which is exactly your ring in a vortex, is exactly what that is. That's what that crystalline structure is. So if you can wrap your mind around that, then it makes it pretty easy. Everything in this world works on a ring. If you can get it to ring, you can produce energy all day long because it's producing a vortex.
Okay, so this is so crucial what you are explaining, and another aspect of what I had been like engineering out in my mind and developing nanotechnology and like my material science products is the ring that's the getting them in harmonic frequency when you make it, as you make it. And I know how to engineer that, and that's what I want to be developing next.
Nice.
And so it's need to start using or getting like like some transducers or what's like I need to get a little power supply, and I need to get a little is it acoustic generator? I guess.
Oh, you just want a frequency generator.
Yeah, so it's like to start hitting the reactions with three separate ones, like with 3 different types of the frequency input. Like all different experiments, but all like
if you
combine in the end.
Okay, if you build a geometry coil, it'll build the ring for you.
Okay.
Because you have to build the geometry coil. So two wires, right? 2 wires go across from each other, you get a frequency. But now when I run them in the rest of it and I bring it back around to it, and I got 2 wires going this way. Because it's scalar, it builds as different frequencies because it's different frequencies every time. As you turn it again, you have another frequency that goes on, and again. And then before you know it, you have your hexagon shape in the center. Now you have your ring automatically. But you want to make that thing double-sided. So you want a coil inside of a coil in that experiment so that it rings both ways, one way, then the other way, one way, then the other way. That's what you're looking for in it. So a geometry coil works perfect. I have a hexagon one I just built.
See, that is something else I've done a bit of and had crazy results and want to do even more of. And so I think, so what with the crystal, like what's the static charge or like the piece of electrical that you use to get crystal electricity? What's it called, or measure?
You want piezoelectric?
Piezoelectric. There we go. The piezoelectric.
Well, let's look at how it's formed. In the earth, you have to have a radiant field in order to form it, don't you?
So how do I get a piezoelectric input from to put into the water with like an anode and cathode? And how would I be able to connect that to change the frequency or flow of it?
Okay, so if you want to get to any crystal, what you have to do is one, has to go in water. Two, you have to take the negative side of the testicle, which is right down the center, and it'll communicate directly with the crystal. You could do it with sand. Just take sand, put it in a bucket, drop that line in there, and it automatically amplifies that water because it's now resonating the crystal inside at a very low resonance because you are not in perfect resonance with it yet. That's it. That's as simple as it gets, Bernie. That's all you have to do. That's why I put it on my site where I'll throw it in the water, man, like 5 light bulbs and make a star in my front yard because it's literally that easy. That's how it's done because you got to remember when it's built out of a negative radiant field, it's telling you something. It's telling you that a negative radiant field communicates with this. Now, wait until you know what I mean. You really want some energy out of it. Pulse it. Pulse wave. Hit it with a pulse wave. As soon as it's resonating, when it gets to each part of the octave that you want, pulse it. And boom, the energy flies out of this thing. So you want to see a little disturbing bolt here, go like this, go like this. That's how you do it.
That's exactly what I want to be doing. What do I need to get? What equipment do I need to be doing that next?
Basically, Bernie, Slayer Exciter, Tesla coil, build the negative one that I do. It's one transistor, it's one resistor, and that's the whole thing. You can run it up to 40 volts, and it'll run all day long cool. Okay? Will not blow up on you. That's it. You probably only want to run it at 5 volts or something like that for what you're doing. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe a little playing around, maybe a little 40, but
eventually, eventually, right? But yeah.
But that's all you got to do. Now, with the Slayer Exciter, it's self-correcting, so the winds on it is based on how much frequency you want in it. So the shorter and smaller the coil with the thicker windings, okay, will shove that thing through the roof. You know what I mean? Terahertz, things like that. If you want to go hertz,
I want to be able to work into the terahertz.
Oh, you're going to be able to do it easily. That's not hard. That's the easy part of a Tesla coil. Getting it into the hertz is the hard part because now you have to build a big Tesla coil. So when you see Tesla coils, just understand this, the size of them. Do you really think he's in the kilohertz? Because if you do, you need to go check again because you don't understand Tesla coils. You're in the hertz. He's not playing in kilohertz. He's playing in hertz. See, there's a big difference. So when he says the crystal is activated like life, it's because he's directly playing with that crystal's frequency. He's creating the plasma inside of it. That's the whole point. What are you looking at now?
I love this one. Oops, here we go. The Rosicrucian order, and it is cosmic vibrations, octave, and vibrations per second, starting from 2 going to million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, whatever is above quadrillion. Right, but at a quadrillion, we're in the X-ray, right? That's vibrations per second, and terahertz, I believe, is trillion, right? And that it's essential. So what's crazy about this is the Rosicrucian order's scientific world publication study that they put together in I think it was like the 70s, somewhere in the 60s to 80s. I don't know what, but this is it, and it's like it is both. I guess they're doing octaves, measuring the octaves to the vibrations per second. And I guess this is all frequency or EM, right? The fields. And that here, just this section right here is our visible light spectrum at in oh yes, that's trillions. So terahertz, quadrillions.
So hold
Would
on, Bernie. Is this why they keep telling me it's going to take millions of volts to lift something off the ground? This chart right here?
No, this is the exact opposite. This is the key to how we engineer exact opposite out of that. And then, it's that with Tesla, there's the three keys of frequency, vibration, and energy, right?
Okay.
That's the three, I think.
believe it's that. Energy, frequency, and vibration. Yes.
Yeah. And that it's the vibrations per second, which is EM radiation, I guess, right? Like that is the wave. And
so
that
frequency equals 1 over time, or frequency equals I over T. I think sometimes people misunderstand this. Frequency equals I, which is energy, over T, which is time. It's basically just your frequency wave, how fast it'll pulse all the way across. That's it. That's the only thing separating you in this whole thing. That's what that says then. It's just how fast you could get it to the frequency is how fast it goes up in the terahertz.
Yeah, and it's how fast the energy is moving through time. And it's on these exponential layers that dimensional boundaries happen. And that it's like the gravitational boundary breaks and is used at this in the quadrillion times per second that energy is moving or slash matter is moving.
Okay. Can I stop you here?
Yeah.
Okay. We're not calculating to move the world. Okay.
No.
Just hear me out. When they start telling you about this high frequency, they're calculating based on the Earth. They're not calculating based on the bubble you're building. They're trying to tell you we need this much energy to force ramrod this thing up through the Earth in order to lift it, right?
Through the Earth field. And let me explain why. Because you need the three, and that there are three. You have to break that field and have yourself in alignment and resonance and ringing with that field. You have to do it with your own, and then the one of like the destination that you're going. And I believe maybe the fourth through space time, but it's like you have to have those four in the harmonic resonance to then be able to engineer the device that either propels you to it or connects to it and brings you there, or there's a few different ways, but it's like that's the key of the three.
Pull this thing down. I want to explain this to you, okay? Because this is why physics is screwed up. We do not have to play with the energy of the Earth in order to get there. You see, we're going to create a microcosm of the Earth in a field. Now, all I have to create is the opposite side of the field that I'm in. You see, we're in a positive pressure environment with a hot energy field around us, okay? That's it. Now I need to create a cold energy field to change the temperature differential between the two. I move based on where my electricity is forced to one side where the heat is. See, I'm going to create amps in one corner and it's going to move in that direction. That's not what that you were just telling me. That's you have to follow.
The propulsion there, but you have to have a couple more fields, and one of them is to like encase yourself and be like in the same resonance as like the trillion ones or whatever, because if you're not when you do the motion or the travel or whatnot, it's like that's where the time aspect is exponentially condensed onto your like biology and own time space. And it's like if you don't have that one in check, that's where it's like you'll turn to dust or an old man or die or a child or like just have horrible
You're going to
things.
create a time dilation field. There's no question that you're doing that, but that's also in the gravity well that you're creating in the center. I'm trying to tell you it's something very simple. Go out and take a bubble machine and turn it on. Every bubble breaks gravity. It does not follow the laws of gravity. Put heat into that bubble and it will rise. It does not follow the laws of gravity. It's outside of it. Now, if I create an energy bubble, I am outside the gravitational field of the Earth itself. I just need to direct the energy. That's it. So when I tell you to take a static electricity field, and I tell you to take a radiant field, and I told you to shove them together, I'm telling you, just like Sal Paya has told you, I'm creating a plasma field that goes around in clear plasma that's in order to create that little bubble I need just around my craft. Now, my energy requirement is not the Earth, it's the bubble. Now I don't have to have millions of volts. I don't have to have millions of amps. That bubble violates nature. It violates gravity. See, just like blowing bubbles in the backyard with your kids, man. You go out and look at them. They violate nature all the time.
Okay, so you're the second, like, I would call authority and experience of this that has told me exactly this in the last 2 days. So there's potentially that I have like in my mind one aspect that is unneeded and it is a lot easier. Or like I'm over complicating it, I guess, of everything.
Well, we could do the Hutchinson. Would you like to do the Hutchinson anti-gravity? Because it's all about balls to the wall energy. That's what that is.
That one disintegrates matter. It's that it's like we also need to.
Well, yeah, because you're creating plasmoids, not meaning to, right?
Yeah.
Well, the outside is that you want to create small plasmoids or big ones. I mean, look, when you're doing Hutchinson, you're creating giant plasmoids that rip things apart. I mean, it's real simple. You're creating a field around static electricity, which just continues to build in there with resonance. So what are you going to get? You're going to get electrocuted as soon as that plasmoid comes near you. You're done. Your life is over. I don't like to work with things like that because they're life enders. Why not work with something that's easier to work with? And all you have to understand is a field bubble, which has already been created. You can create it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that difficult.
Okay, and it's the field bubble and then creating multiple of the field bubbles for what you intend to do, sort of thing, and then engineering.
Just one around your craft. And it look, it's like two fields with plasma that builds in the center. That's the way it works. You see, that plasma field is what you guys see as the shiny thing in the sky, the blurry object, the whatever you want to say, transformational object, all that. That's that blurry field. That's that clear plasma.
100%.
You don't have enough energy on the inside to the outside in order to create a colored plasma.
Okay,
so all the light's going to refract through it.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know why in my mind I've had it stuck for the last couple of days that I need 3 of those, like in like a gyroscope.
Because you're thinking of Ashton's airplane. He's got 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's like that even to the next level where it's like by having 3 gyroscopic bubbles of plasma within themselves, then you could get like anywhere in space time. But so I'm overcomplicating the first step of just the 2-layer fields that create the plasma in between, and that plasma bubble is all we need for
your craft. Yeah. Now, if you want to create teleportation, create the 3. They're going to follow the ring, the vortex. They're going to follow it. Look, there's no getting around it. That plane was ringing. Okay, that's exactly what it was doing. It picked up too much turbulence, started ringing, and plasmoids started getting attracted to it. Plasmoids are real simple to create in nature. All you need to do that is to take a microwave and run it against the radiant field of the Earth. As soon as you do that, you start having a plasmoid. Okay? Because the radiant field will wrap itself right around that energy you're putting into it. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. Yeah. I mean, do you think the thunderstorm generator is that difficult? All you're doing is creating different spheres in order to create a resonance ring inside there, which then takes the energy and creates a static field inside of it, which then encapsulates it by that radiant field that you built, because it's one inside of the other, which forces the outside to the inside, which creates your radiant energy on the inside to hold it.
Right? And it's all about the plasma fields and plasma field interactions.
It's about knowing which two to hook together, because by themselves, they're pretty junky fields. Think about it. They're pretty junky fields. You can't really do much with them, can you? But together, now they start to make something good.
And it's like when I'm talking, I want to get multiple plasma fields together and then in resonance, and then from that you can engineer some pretty useful things.
Oh, wait till you get to 0-point energy, because then the entire thing that you're building is level upon level upon level of scalar. And all you're doing is the same process. You're holding in the static electricity inside of a radiant field at each level. But when you have 1,500 to 2,000 levels, guess what? Now we got a monster number of energy going in there. That's why the 0-point energy. So let's go a little further. 0-point energy is two vortexes coming together like this, and you're opening it up in the center for a singularity, which presents as a plasmoid. And then everything around it pulls apart and puts together inside the plasmoid. Thunderstorm generator pulls apart every single molecule, puts them back together in a different chain or the same chain coming out. That's as simple as it gets.
Right? And like, it's so exciting. It's so key. And it's what I'm specifically. So most of the questions I was asking tonight don't really have anything to do with my main work. And it's like, my main work is actually exactly what you're talking about right there. And the interactions of it into and out of water and in these monoatomic states and the different ionic and charged states of elements, and how electrical charge interaction with them and with water and salts, you get like just the plasmoid reaction and possibility, and without the need for having a big like ionized like arc or hot plasma amounts. But if you get that, there's that reaction and that interaction with all matter and material, and it's at the water level and the anode cathode level and the structure of the materials on the nano scale, and it's engineering that. When you get that, then it's like you get the lattice layers that then turn something into like 1 trillion times, which like usually the force and the interaction is like 1 trillionth of anything useful. But when you get that one right thing, and then it's like, boom, you got a fucking 10 trillion of them. And then it's like, all of a sudden, it takes just a tap, and that tap of energy gives you an entire phase or state change, or like a crystallization matter change, like the bonds between atoms shift, move, break, and like huge amounts of energy happen and are usable, and that is where the true.
So you created a pulse inside of it. So you went from a resonance frequency to a resident frequency, which is two frequencies in resonance with a pulse wave.
Yes, that.
That's what breaks structure, because it's a powerful wave.
That's exactly what I am looking to engineer and develop and need, and we can create anything out of anything.
Well, that's what the little piezo buzzers do. They create a pulse wave.
Yeah, see, I was saying the piezo. Yeah, okay, piezo, but yes.
So they create a little pulse wave that goes in there, and if you have something in resonance, it excites it and pushes more plasma out the other end. It literally forces a higher amount of energy to come out the other side of that coil. That's what it does.
That is the key. And what?
It's an over unity device. I mean, think about it. It's literally an over unity device in your system, because it's amplifying what's in there already. It's taking that same frequency of that coil and repeating it back to itself and pushing more of the amount out of it. Now, how many times is it hitting, or which frequencies is it hitting? It might hit them all. If it does, you can end up, instead of a little spark, a big spark. So the engineering is fairly simple to some of this stuff. You just got to follow the flow of the energy and which way it wants to run. You know what I mean? Just show me the energy, how it flows, and then follow the nature of it. You know what I mean? That's all you got to do, just like Schauberger did. Just follow the flow, find out where it turns, where it likes to be doubled up at. You know what I mean?
Exactly what I've been observing, doing, and working with and on, and we are on many of the same wavelengths, my friends.
Nice.
And why we're discussing exactly this. I'm sorry, I got to take a call for 1 minute.
Go for it.
You got stuff you want to talk about, or would you like me to start and play a little bit of the Nassim video?
Go ahead and play his video so I can see what he's doing.
Okay. Right. Here we go. So it's like it's starting from the dimensional. Below the ground, it starts at the dot. But
okay.
I'll let this play, and then there's a few changes that I add to this that I'd like to go over at the end. But yeah.
Okay.
It said this is dimension 0, and it doesn't exist. And I was like, oh, this is not gonna go well. I knew from that moment on I was gonna fail that class. Because I was way back, I was always nearest the door. And I could see the dot. So if I could see the dot, how is it that it didn't exist? And then the teacher did something remarkable. He put a bunch of dots together, made a line, and said, this is dimension 1, and it doesn't exist either, because it still doesn't enclose volume. And then he put 4 lines together, made a plane, called it 2D, and said that's the plane that all your comic strip books lives in, and it doesn't exist. And I could see, like, the kids were crushed, They were like, what? And then he did something miraculous. This is the equivalent of the, miraculous Big Bang, He did something miraculous. He took 6 of these planes, put them together to make a cube, called it dimension 3, and said, this one exists. And I was like, huh? How did that happen? Because I don't care if you put 100 million non-existing planes together, you don't get existence, right? If the dot that doesn't exist, right, makes the line that doesn't exist, makes a plane that doesn't exist, you don't get existence. You get non-existence to the 4th. Big issue. I didn't know at the time. Turns out many other thinkers had the same problem throughout the ages. One of the most famous one was Buckminster Fuller. Another one was my father, actually, turns out. And, you know, they thought about it, but nobody really solved the issue. And so, why is this important? Well, this is actually the fundamental axiom that most of our physics are written on. And if we, in the math, we write those physics with. So if we have this wrong to start with, if it's incorrect or if it's incomplete, then we're going to get an incomplete or incorrect picture at the end. And so, because people learn this very early in their education, it's usually not revisited ever by the physics community. And at the end of the day, then they have superstrings theory and Calabi-Yau spaces trying to solve equation for unification for advanced physics, and they have to add, you know, planes of freedom one after the other to get like 248 dimensions of Calabi-Yau space, and the equations go on forever. And at the end of the day, it doesn't add up. All right? So, when I was going home from that day, I had this long bus ride to go back to my home because I kept on getting kicked out of the schools closer to my home. A physicist later on told me in a physics conference that that's how I furthered my education. Because I had all this time to think about it, right? And so I'm sitting there, I've got an hour and a half to go, and I'm thinking, man, I gotta solve this dimensional problem. This is not happening. I can't live with this. And I'm thinking, and then the bus is getting fuller and fuller, and I thought, oh, you know, it's getting hot, and so I closed my eyes, and in my mind's eye, I extruded myself from the bus, and I started rising up from the bus, and I saw slowly the bus becoming smaller as I rose further and further, and then I saw the city I was in becoming smaller as I rose further and further and further, and then the continent getting smaller, and then I saw the earth getting smaller, and as I rose further, I saw the solar system getting smaller, and like looking like a dot, and then I rose further and further, and then the galaxy started to look like a dot, and I thought, oh my God, it's dots all the way up. And then I flew back into the galaxy and looked at the solar system and flew back in and went back to the earth and found the bus I was in, and I opened my eyes and I looked at my hand and I thought, I wonder what's in there. I closed my eyes, and in my mind's eye, I flew into my hand, and I saw it was made out of millions and millions of dots we call cells. And then I went on to the surface of one of those dots and looked really carefully, and I got finer and finer, and eventually it opened up like it was stars of dots everywhere, billions of them that we call atoms. And then I went to one of those dots, and I looked in the middle of it, and sure enough, what was there? Another dot. And I was like, oh, it's dots all the way down. And I had this epiphany, you know, like, oh my God, maybe the universe, maybe the answer to the riddle is the exact contrary. The only thing that exists is a dot. The universe makes points of infinite division and assembles them at different scales and make everything we see. I was like looking at the people in the bus, and I could see they were made out of dots and smaller dots and smaller dots. They seemed to glow with a strange aura, and you know, at this moment. And you know, when you have these moments of epiphany, I'm sure many of you in this room had them. You know what you want to do next, right? You want to tell someone, right? And you all know how that goes usually. You get the look like, did you take your medication this morning? And You know, so I ran home when I got out of the bus, and I waited for my mom to come back from work. And when she got home, I was like, Mom, I figured out something at school today. It's so awesome. And my mom was all excited. It's like, oh my God, he's actually enjoying school. Like, oh, maybe he had a good exam, you know, for the first time in his life. And I'm like, Mom, today I learned about dimension at school, and they're wrong. I just went over like a lead balloon. And it's like, Mom, I think it's the contrary, that like the only thing that exists is dots, and you're made out of dots, and a smaller one and smaller one, and so on. You get infinite amount of dots, Mom. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? I just worked for 8 hours. I'm real tired. I don't feel infinite at all. And, you know, she had made a point, you know, pun intended. And it's like if everything is embedded into each other to infinity, is how you get boundary condition. How does things differentiate from each other? This has been a big problem. It's a chasm in our understanding. How does infinity and finite system interact? Typically, we think they don't. And that has shown up in our physics really strongly. So now we have a theory for like big stuff, Einstein field equations, that predicts continuums towards singularity, continuums towards infinity, and we have a theory for the small stuff, for the atoms and the subatomic particles we call quantum theory, and quantum theory predicts bounded linear finite states. So the two don't agree. And
all right, my apologies. I was on phone, but that was a pretty good part to it. But I need to add a crucial thing. It's that it's actually dots and holes, and that there's multiple dimensions, but we need to identify the dimensions that exist and that everything is based off of, and that they build much larger dimensions, and each larger dimension is exponentially larger in complexion and is built off of the initial structures of the smaller dimension that it is compiled of. And through this, we get the universal languages and codes, and that there's like first there is the binary code, right? And like ones and twos, but really it's actually dots and holes. And that there's an electron energy, or like a wave, and it's going on in physics it's a one-dimensional vector, right? And then that's your x-axis, and to get a second dimension you have now a y-axis, and you're building up dimensions that create larger dimensions of complexity and size that break down into smaller base ones. And this is how the fractal dimensions work in our existence, like the different geometries, fractals of mathematics and geometry. And that was what sacred geometry was sacred and used as and for. And it's how energy shapes and forms and structures and transfers throughout the inner and outer larger dimensions of the universe. And yeah, on that thoughts, I would like your thoughts on this, my friends.
A lot of dimensions and holes, man. After he said there's no dots at all, that's pretty bad to start with, isn't it?
Well, because he was comparing off of the what we're actually taught in school, which is even worse, right? Of and that there's actually three, because well, you have first the two, the dots and holes, but then you have the line between them, and it's like that's like the Holy Trinity, one of the many Holy Trinities. There's so many of them, but it's like there's also, it's like you've got, I guess, one's the positive, one's negative, and one's the neutral. And that's the other, like, three of our third dimension. And out of those,
So basically, are you telling me that there's a null zone in the center of something? Is that
100%?
okay? So that's what we're getting to here, then.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting a little lost with the lines and the holes. So, and then you get a bigger dimension, you get a bigger hole, and then yeah.
Well, okay.
Better just to say there's a null zone.
Good call, and that actually connects to.
I mean, they wrote it all over anti-gravity papers with Carr. When you see the vortexes coming together and the two ends of the cones overlap each other, that's your null zone right there.
Yes,
now,
sir.
You want to tap the 0-point energy out of that, you got to open that up. You got to pull the energy out of that. There's nothing there until you open it.
And you have to tap it from the 90-degree intersections of the opposing dimensional vortexes.
Yeah, so tap them on and off. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, just like that. And then it starts to open the hole. So I told you in the center, it's like a plasmoid. It's pure energy. It's not AC, it's not DC, it's energy. It's something that we really don't talk a lot about, is what pure energy actually is. Well, that's it.
You are so bang on with that. And that we need to exactly discuss the difference between the three, and also creating identifying the fourth, that is the cold electrical current, and potentially engineering a fifth, or just engineering the cold current into modern electrical systems and appliances.
It's very easy. Just break the symmetry twice. That's it. All you have to do is rectify it twice. That's as simple as it gets, and it goes right into the cap. It uses regular energy, not a negative energy, not a cold energy. It's not Bedini's energy. It is normal, everyday energy after that.
And specifically what you've brought up a few times, and that's important, and that is part of Walter Russell's all of his diagrams and dimensional geometry drawings, is the vortex and the peaks and where they intersect, and tapping those points. And also,
null zone, it has the energy right there. He's showing it every sign.
Right, and the right-hand rule. So all electric magnetism is based off of the right-hand rule, which is dots and holes. It's a dot in the center and a big old hole around it. And that right there is dimension number 1. And the holy trinity of dimension number 1 is you have the hole on the outside, the dot in the middle, and the line to it, right? And you got like right there, and that's like your electrical field. And then the next like exponential dimension up, holy trinity from that, is your 3 fields that are 3 holes that are 3 equal circles. That is then your magnetic field and your gravitational field, and they all exist in the same one dimension, which is a an infinite dimension between the center dot and the whole giant circle around it, and the line that is that one dimension of flow between the two, and the field that is between it, and that all three of these graphitic fields, the electric field, and the magnetic field, are directly proportional in all their force and interaction between those three pieces, dimensions. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense based on what they're teaching you. Yeah.
And how they interact. Well, and then it's how you manipulate it. So,
I mean, look, the Earth doesn't work like that, but yeah, it's interesting. Like, you got to start understanding a little different. It's radiation. Where the field is not gravitational or whatever. It's radiation. It's the simplest form of energy on the Earth. We work on radiation. Our sky has a radiant field around it. As soon as the sun pushes against that radiant field, we get the radiation of that field pushing upon us. Okay? That's why it causes problems to the human body, because you're putting a hot radiant field right next to you. So what happened to the people that were studying Tesla coils and they didn't realize they were getting X-rayed at the same time because they ran the frequency too high? They suffered bouts of radiation damage to their body. It's the fundamental field you have to see. There's always an opposite to the field. So you'll have a positive and negative, but that's the field you need to look into. That's why I say when you get into volts and amps and they start quantifying this stuff, if you don't quantify the radiant field, you failed in a magnetic understanding, right? There is no radiant field. There is no calculation for it. That's the problem with physics. They all put it on a magnetic field. Well, what's the opposite of the magnetic field? It's the radiant field. It's the radiation. They should have learned that with the atom bomb. And instead, they just build little electrons and keep going. And they went right past what it was. You literally close that thing and you get a massive dose of radiation everywhere. That's the field. So when you say, okay, I need an electric magnetic and now I need another field and create gravity, not gravitational, it's radiant. It's literally the radiation. So we see it in our Van Allen belt. What is it doing? It's capturing radiation in a belt. It's telling you it's time dilation too, by the way. So when you go out in space, you're dilating time differently.
Radiation energy includes time within it.
Well, it's the difference between your hot energy field and your cold energy field. It's what creates the time dilation. It's what creates that plasma field. That interaction is how much you're creating the distance between the two. You're literally working on the Planck scale while working on the world scale at the same time. The field on the outside has to be built the same on the inside on the Planck scale. That's how you get time dilation. So you can also talk about the compression of those fields.
Okay, so field compression is directly tied or affected by time, right? Field compression, time dilation, or no?
The amount of energy you put from one to the next with the temperature differential between the two creates the time dilation in which direction you're going.
Oh my God, what you just said is so crucial to the three and how they interact. Yeah, okay.
There's a heavy side component in the capacitor. It's the leaky capacitor. which you have to be able to build in order to get the fields to come out in the static electricity and the radiant energy inside of a coil in order to create those fields, in order to pin that plasma field down. Time dilation is not difficult. Okay, you can do it with rotating discs. It's not something that you have to have super high frequency on. As a matter of fact, the Earth does it on low frequency. It's the understanding of the fields themselves is what you got to understand. How are they interacting? What's that? What's going on there? Why are they interacting that way? And it's not until you realize that the static electricity is your magnetic field. Your radiant field is your radiation. We now should be able to put the puzzle together. The two hitting each other at different temperatures creates a plasma. You just have to look at the Earth and the solar system around the Earth, right? Just look out there. It's cold out there. It's hot in here. There's a field in between us. It's a plasma field. It is literally like standing in your room on a cold winter's day while your house is hot and opening the window. That's what you're doing. You're allowing it to flow. That's why it feels colder on the coil. It's not because you want to freeze the coil. It's the environment pulling the amount of energy through it at such a rapid rate with zero heat and losses that creates the energy that goes higher, that creates a room temperature superconductor, instead of turning it into a fireball.
Yes. Okay. What you just said is the difference in ionized gas, which is plasma state, between flame and stable cold plasma, hot plasma, neutral plasma, and cold plasma states. Those are, yes.
You're pinning fields in, Bernie. Listen, when you constantly put energy into something, right? But it can't dissipate because you have no heat. You have no dissipation method. It cannot leave it. So it continues to build. As it continues to build, it builds in the swirl that goes around it. It will continue to hold in more and more and more of it because it can't dissipate it. See, the heat itself in the hot system we use is burning off our energy. It's taking 30 to 40% off the top right away. It ruins any cold energy circuit to create over unity because it's heat. So what do you have to do? You have to create a neutral environment and then allow that energy itself to pull down the temperature in the room. Then you have something. That's the only way to do a room temperature superconductor without using different materials to do it. Just basic, all you need is copper wire with a coating, and you have to have the correct geometry.
Yes, and what you're describing is like so freaking crucial. What I've been thinking in my mind, and the exact nano coating between the three differentials. Your neutral copper wire is the black nano coating layer of copper that you are able to produce the three normal ways, whether it's electrolysis, whether it's using lye, the caustic method, or by plasma flame, the blue flame, where you just coat the outer layer, but you get it just to that black layer. And what that does is it breaks down the bonds between the solid metal state and the outer shell of these nano single bonds that are left. And that's the standard Keshi plasma nano coating of copper nano coating. And then the two differentials, the negative and the positive, your positive copper coil or circuit, you actually get the hydride coating of the metal on it, the red state of it, and on the negative side you get the oxide, the blue coating on it. And between the neutral black, the positive hydroxide, and then the negative oxide, the plasma fields of those three, that's where you have the symmetry and the major energy interactions and potential of all of the fields, and that's the basis of all of Keshe's technology.
So you're basically putting a coating on the outside of the wire itself, right? And
Yeah,
it's building in a structure.
yeah.
And based on the structure that you're putting in there, you say it's carbon. So you have a hexagon structure that goes into it in between each wire or layers that you put into it, right?
Yeah. Well, he just teaches the carbon one, and then I'm proposing that. Well, actually, no. On his three coils, he says, yeah, the one's the white or black one, and then the other two are the red and the blue, the oxide and the hydride ones, and that it's those two differences. It's like that's in electrolysis, your anode and your cathode, the metals will produce from the breakdown of water and oxygen going on one and hydrogen going on the other. So that's like when you're coating your metals from the air and the plasma fields and the circuits, that you have the three fields, and that when you're coating the outside of all of your metals with these extra nano layering, that you're creating and amplifying those three plasma fields in your electrical or circuitries, field circuit.
Okay. So, and you're supposed to pick up energy from this?
Oh yes, huge amounts, and transmit them. It's the interaction of actual plasma fields.
Interesting. So have you ever made a battery like this?
So I've done a lot of it. I've actually advanced a lot of it in different ways, but I've never actually fully connected his plasma circuit because, well, it's like, I don't know. All the testimonies I was reading, all the videos I was watching, it all worked really good. But when you get to the fucking plasma field, the majority of them couldn't handle the conscious connection that they got from like the plasma intelligence thing. It was kind of strange.
Is there water in it?
What?
Is there water in it?
It creates such a big plasma field. There's like a blue glowing field in like a big area of space once the three coils are in resonance in the plasma field going, and it's like then you can add to the coil fields the nano layering like your own nano field material, like through the electrolysis production. It's like you drop a drop of your blood into the electrolysis reaction with the monoatomics or the nanos that you're making, and the nano coating layer that you can add into the field, so that when you coat your entire coils that are already nano coated into this plasma amplifying huge field with because you have a solenoid coil within a solenoid coil within a solenoid coil that are all three coated in these plasma fields that are amplifying the plasma field within the plasma field within the plasma field of the electrical fields of like, and then when you drop the blood into the water, all of a sudden on the cathode side, always on the atomic hydrogen, this just white flake, nano flake always appears, and from that point, it's like while the reaction's going on, it just keeps making and reproducing your nano like structure, your amino acid or whatever, but it's like reproducing it on a bond with monoatomic of that element. So it's like if you're producing monatomic gold and monatomic silver, but if you're doing the coil and it's copper, so you want it with copper, that you're bonding your amino acid to. So then when you make that giant plasma field, it's also creating that plasma field in your specific biological human plasma resonant field. So it literally has you on the real plasma field to cellular field interaction level. And that, from what I've observed and seen, like the real plasma field like grid is like a conscious connected grid. So if you don't have conscious control of yourself and how other conscious like input comes in, you can go very insane very quickly. And if like you're a tormented soul that's like not consciously aware and already struggling with like other demons trying to come into you, they can very quickly spiral out of control and have other outside influences, you know, taking over.
You see the dark ghosts.
Well, others see the dark ghost come out because you've lost control, sort of thing. And it's like, at the time, I definitely wasn't in enough mental state. I think I am now, and it's time to start experimenting with it. But a key part that, see, all of this, like there was so much of it, like 3 years into the whole Akeshi field and plasma teachings and like open workshops. And it's like I was big into it weekly, every single week, doing it, the steps, learning and seeing like all the others that like truly got everything right. And it's like after a couple years, a lot of they demonstrate everything once on the video, like the 5-hour videos that are up from every week. But it's like that was it. After that point, it goes into the work group videos that are all like private within the group and like just stay within the collective of that technology thing, but you never ever see it again. And like it's talked about, and like they're trying to develop it publicly for anyone that like is still out there and asks stuff, and they're quite advanced on it, but it's like the West doesn't really understand it or see everything happen. But point being, as it went on, and it's like as people started building the coils and the coil fields and getting their own like nano plasma onto it, a lot of them claimed that they didn't have to eat really anymore, or like a lot less sleep when they were in these fields, because the fields would actually charge them and stuff. And it was quite interesting. And that it's like, but you would take like an orange, like the orange, and this is literal alchemy, like because you take the oils, the essence of an orange, of like a banana and whatnot, and you'd break it down into the nanomaterial, and then you'd also coat that or put that in some water, and then like put that in between the coil for a bit, let the water charge, and then you'd coat the coil on that. And it's like, I guess that's like it adds to your field, and you get like the energy of the apple, the orange, and the banana and stuff. Like it was great. Like there was all sorts of like guys that were doing, but then like then what? So this is the first time I've ever talked about this shit publicly or to anyone like since this shit happened. Like, and it's like flat. Like there's some crazy stuff that went down, and it's like you don't really know what to make like but it's like, so there's like 5 different groups that really had breakthroughs in there, and like one of them was definitely a straight up like British American like commando special op like nerd group of like 3 dudes that were like on Zoom connected that were like military scientists that like,
Okay.
and then and I was part of that group for a while, and they advanced their design into something they were claiming and saying like was taking them through like, it seemed like from like the 4 different like 4 hour like Zoom things I had done with them, and like how they were designing the technology, what I was like recommending with them and sharing from like my own results and whatnot, and what they like had like were sharing with me and stuff. It was like they had designed this triple coil plasma field system with like a gold, a copper, and I think it was iron. Yeah, so it's iron as the center wire. And that's because it's your magnetic or your ferrite, your ground, essentially. And that's also why Bob Greenyer says in the bagel coil, the very first wire you want it to be, he says iron and stuff. And this is why. And it's the one that goes like straight. And I've been like figuring this out and thinking it for a while. And that's the ground charge that goes, and it's like the magnetic, and then the next wire that's round around that, like that's your smaller one that is the electron it's the first spin, and it's right hand rule spin, and that's creating your electromagnetic field or your electric field. And then the next wire is a bigger is gold. Do you want the gold as your second larger I guess the electromagnetic field? Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so the third one is that electroplasma field. And by doing the same process of the nano coating each of those 3 wires, of you breaking them down, that outer shell, and having that carbon on like, so the carbon black coating goes on the electrical coil system that is connected into your like Slayer circuit, or like the grid electronic sort of thing, and that is separate from the circuits that you do that are ringing or like in harmonic resonance or in the plasmatic energies. And that sorry, because I'm connecting and trying to explain how advanced and how the Keshe Magrav system works, and how also his plasma system of fields work, which is like identical to everything you say, do, and show, as well as Jailed, and like anyone else that truly is starting to understand plasma fields and the whole science of it and engineering of it. And it's like, it blows my mind because it's like everything Keshe like taught scientifically is like this plasma model of fields, and it's like exactly what all you guys are getting, showing, and understanding and teaching. And then it's like, I don't know. There's a lot to take. There's a lot of crazy stuff. And anyways, back to the freaking different groups that I experienced. And then like they literally turned into breakaway like civilization stuff, where like it was just like the Black Ops dudes, like they last I heard of them, they're like, oh, we got the portal thing, and then they're like, oh, we're gone. And I was like, holy fuck. And like the GANs that they were making, no one had figured out the blood yet, and I'm the one that's like worked with blood, and it's quite crazy, and like I've continued it on, and it's like haven't really, because they were doing the field things, but it's like when you're actually doing the electrolysis and the monatomics and like the live plasma, because it's charged plasma, like it grows and it scares the shit out of me because of like all the homunculus like alchemy stuff, and it's like, oh god. But like the right salt water, oh, so yeah, that's the alchemy. Sorry, I'm just understanding things like for the first time in my own mind. But
Going into the woo in your own head, huh?
no, well, breaking down the woo into real science as like processing these different three like aspects of plasma and the types of plasma and like ions, like ionized states of like matter particles, right? Like that in charged water is an ionic state that is not hot. So that is a superconductive state in ionic water. And you also have the crystal solid state interactions between matter in this solution and in this engineering, chemical, electric, heat as well, exchange, breakdowns, and interactions. And when you truly understand that, over unity will like soon become a thing of the past, because it's just gonna be like, you're gonna be like, holy fuck, like, well, humanity, like, it's just anyone that argues or isn't using it will just be left to the past, because once it's cold. I'm trying to understand the true potential of, because it's like not like a nuclear fusion, it's not a radiation fusion, but it's an energy exchange fusion of between matter and energy and potential and engineering that we have not connected to the electrical side. But as soon as it is
it the connection or the breaking?
Both.
Is it the breaking apart or the connection?
It's all three. It's all three. It's the breaking, the connecting, but also the phase exchange, like the state of matter phase change aspect. Like it's the construction, breakdown, and reassembling aspects. All of it. It's the mechanics.
When you start breaking things apart, like the water.
Yeah, that's one half of it. And the other half is putting it back.
Where the energy comes from.
Exactly, of course, 100%.
Yeah,
so it's like, yeah, because on your anode and your cathode, it's like you're breaking everything down on one side and putting it back together kind of on the other, and the flow of everything in between. And then the engineering aspects and utilization is all the little systems that you design and utilize and block and put in between those two exit points, and then take out and tap into and use everywhere. And these other systems that you can form and use with it, and that I've been designing, such as like the hydrogen fuel, the oxygen, and also just charge, and then chemical, nano chemical material making processes and breakdowns and putting back together, like the material science of it. And like it's thing that's wild, because it's the plasma nano coating, right? It's the nano coating that you were just talking into that creates the field. And I guess I should actually ask you a bit more on that to tie this all together here, and your understanding of it, and a bit more of mine, because
carbon has a good K value, right? But graphene has a much higher K value. Now we can start building a little bit of capacitors. You want to look into TT Brown's capacitors? You want to start creating something that drives a static field through the roof? Layer them. You got to remember in with the Bedini series that he did, he had that Chinese lady, I can't remember her name. And all she told you about was a mesh. Okay? The mesh structure was creating the energy. It was producing more energy because of the way it meshed. Well, now take graphene and mesh it one over the other as you're creating your fields and layer it. Now you're going to get a higher value. That's why I keep telling you guys, and I don't think you understand quite yet, that's why paper has a better value to it. It turns from a non-conductor into a semiconductor in a static field. Well, that's because of the mesh and the way the mesh works out and the air in between. Because once you have the mesh, now you created a field where it holds the energy on the inside of whatever you created. Well, now take that into capacitor plates for TT Brown. Now you can start to understand the amount of static electricity he's producing when he basically just use a Tesla coil down the center to create the radiant field. He's creating a massively charged static field in there. It's that simple. That's all he did. He understood the correct way to build each layer to do it because he understood the mesh. That lady told you the same thing. Most people missed it. They just thought, oh man, she's putting the coating of an airplane and created charged mesh. Oh man, we're going a little faster. Well, yeah, who gives a you know what? It's creating massive charges.
I thank you, Nathan. Right there, I'm pretty sure is where I am going to file my first patents and develop technology, a very useful equipment. But that's not going to happen tomorrow. But anyways, we will talk. No, continue on with what you're saying. Actually, I should not interrupt you because what you're just explaining is huge implications. Please.
Well, think of it this way. There's charge fields on the negative end, but you can change them positive. You just have to field flip it. It's really not that difficult. So I'll give you the example of my gravity flare, right? So we have a rotating disc on the top that's positive, one on the bottom that's negative. We all know that. We have a center plate that's neutral, right? But what you probably don't realize off the bat is the top of that plate in the center is positively charged. The bottom of that plate is negatively charged. Your negative is always on the bottom. Okay, all that bottom wire does is it goes to a DC flyback transformer, which basically means the core that's wrapped around it goes to your negative side. Then the mylar and the clear plastic that's wrapped around it goes to your diodes, which is the way it builds out with the clear plastic wrapped with a little piece of mylar on it. It's a one-way diode, okay? And it'll actually go to the top, which gives you your high voltage, right? So you get a high voltage, you get a very low voltage and a magnetic field on the bottom. So you know your bottom's negative. Now, as I take that piezo disc, which is up above it, and all I'm going to do is pulse it. What does that piezo do? It goes in between the two and just moves the center plate. Now, I'm going to create capacitance between my upper plate and my lower plate and the center plate. Now, as I move it, I'm going to flex the capacitance and build more charge into it until I get to a rate where it has a monster number attached to it. You see, that's where all your energy comes in. The fact that it's on the ground helps you pull the negative through the circuit through the Tesla coil in order to make that field higher. The interaction between the Tesla coil and the high voltage field right there picks up the energy. The resonance between the two plates are in a third of each other. So what happens in order to get this thing to create that monster capacitor in the center? As you resonate these things together, you tap the center, it brings you in between a fourth to a third, to a half. Now that eddy is kicking in a whole lot more on the top one. We almost get 1-to-1, but we don't. We get 1-to-2. And now you have a more energy being picked up by the resonance itself into that capacitance field. The only way to kill it is to spark it. And once you spark it, that whole capacitor is blown. It's done. So you have to make sure everything is coated really well on both plates, and all the outside ring has to be coated really well. Then you can bump that whole thing, and boom, you get that pulse wave out of it, that monster pulse wave, which will take the bottom field from negative and now flip it into positive and drive the craft up. That's how that capacitor turns into a directional field. It took all the energy from the bottom as well as the top and converted it to go one way. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. That's capacitance. That's understanding why you put two things so close together. You know what I mean? I know they got a bunch of different effects to it, but that's really all it is. I mean,
but it's the crucial part of what it is, and that it's engineering that in a few different manners, and then like multiplying it thousands of times over through like the little small aspects of it, and then you get huge amounts of energy, and like that's all usable and into these systems. Like it's, sorry, I've just got so many things going on in my head all at once, because it's like,
so let me tell you why it pops off the ground. So if you pop the capacitor too early without building the alpha field properly, it hops and it turns over on its side. Okay, it's the expansion and contraction that creates the buoyancy. It expands, it contracts. It expands, it contracts. That's all that thing is. It's buoyancy. It's understanding the capacitor the right way in order to lift it. That's literally it, man. Like I told you, that bubble does not follow the fundamental nature of gravity. It doesn't.
Okay.
Sorry. Like a hot air balloon, just put hot air in it and it goes up. I mean, you're having a capacitor discharge, which means you have momentary heat in there in abundance. It goes away. You're literally popping a capacitor in there inside of a bubble field. I know people look at this thing and they don't understand it at all because they don't work on it. So they're just looking at the wrong things. Why would you use Alnico magnets versus regular magnets or neodymiums? Because they're aluminum. When you start resonating aluminum on disk, guess what happens? You get more energy into it. If I want more energy into my magnets, I need them to be built out of aluminum.
Sorry,
I don't care about the gouts. The gouts don't mean.
I gotta add to this, and like a moment ago, when I'm like, I got so many things in my head. It's because like I had this aha moment of like now understanding fields and like electrical, like the specific electrical field or specific like magnetic field that is, like actually specific to current electromagnetic engineering or electrical engineering compared to the overall atomic field on field interactions and matter interactions, and thus also like gravity fields and everything else are like so exponentially different than what like the current like best minds even begin to grasp at, and then what like is even predicted. It's like nothing at all, and how matter, energy, space, all and time all like move and interact with each other. It's wild. It's bubble. It's a lot of bubbles.
You're just creating the ability to make the vortex pull it in.
The vortex. That's
it. You're not creating or destroying energy, Bernie.
Okay, but you're back to dots and holes, brother. The dot is what creates the vortex that goes to, and sorry, the hole is what pulls in, right? So the hole is the inverse one out, and then the dot is the one too. It's the your right hand. It's the right hand rule, and it's the outer to the inner, the orbit in.
But you have to have a left hand rule as well.
Of course, that's the that's the opposite. One,
We gotta remember everything's a yin and a yang. Everything has its opposite. You just have to find out what it is.
Yeah, but it's okay. But the left-hand rule is when we get to the fourth dimension, and that's a whole other thing. We're just getting to the three of the gravity, the magnetic, and the electric.
You know what? You guys use a lot of fancy words to come up with such a simple project.
Hey, I'm saying like, Holy Trinity. It's the three.
Dude, it's like 500 words, and I did it in less than a paragraph. You know what I mean?
Yes, you did. Yeah, actually, you did, and you do. So we need you to do it one last more time right now to sum it all up, so I can clip it and republish it. Because, like, for those that will actually understand what you are truly saying and explaining, please do. Like what we discussed at the beginning and have gone through all right now. My word salad gonna end. Break it down, please.
Well, let's just do it this way. I'll build you a geometry coil and tell you exactly how it works, and it'll incorporate quite a bit of this. Okay. So if I want to build a geometry coil, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it and say, I want a geometry structure in the center. Now, how I want to create that? I want to create it 180 degrees out of phase, which means I want two coils, not just one. So I'm going to wind one as soon as I wind the other. Now, there's always different techniques on how to do this. I'll just tell you the basics of what we're doing here. Now, every time two lines go like this, they come across that are two wires, they create a scalar field in between them. Every time they turn one more time, they create another field. Every time they do it again, they create another one. Again, it's scalar. It builds out in levels, just like the Earth. Builds out in temperature. Now, when you create multiple scalar fields in together, you have friction. Every time you have friction, you have static electricity. The static electricity builds in between the scalar fields. Now, you have held in static electricity in that field. The heavy side component is basic. It's a leaky capacitor. It allows the top and the bottom of that stack you just created in about 1,500 to 2,000 layers to come up this high. Now you've got the leaky capacitor. It's going to be able to build out and come back in, build out and come back in. Now, it cannot stop building it because you haven't let off the gas. You continue to put energy into it, so it's now building it without a release because you're not using hot energy. The center of a coil itself is cold. It's room temperature and below. Now, the outside of it, of the field, is more of a magnetic. It has a magnetic value, so it has a little bit of heat. Now, because it has a little bit of heat, it's a temperature differential. Now it comes out, goes around, holds to the heat, just like a magnetic, and then comes back in. Now you have a temperature differential creating this thing. The more that you can put inside of an environment, a room, a craft, anything that you want to, and you can hold it in with a grounding. So your room, put it to the ground in the room. If you're in a UFO type structure, put it to the grounding of the UFO. Now it cannot escape all that. The energy now builds and builds and builds. You have created something that will gain capacitance and energy without losing it because you have no heat. You have the heat on the outside, but it's only a draw. There's not enough of it to make the system inefficient. Now you're building more energy. Because you're doing that in the inside's radiant and you're also creating static electricity, you create an outside field. That outside field is your anti-gravity field. It's your bubble. Now, the inside field is built on the Planck scale. The outside field is built on the Earth scale. Now you can start to understand what we're doing here. You're now creating a bubble. The energy in that bubble, when it reaches a certain capacitance, has the availability to now pop that capacitor. Now you can start putting in basically a pulse to it, and then you can pop it. Pulse it, pop it, bring it back, pop it, bring it back. Buoyancy, just like that. It's as simple as that. But when you create this thing the right way, you get the Salpayas effect. You get static electricity on the outside. It's a radiant field. You get a plasma in the center of it. And what do you get? Well, if you built it in a hexagon pattern, you get hexagons all around this thing that actually makes a ball. It builds out. It's just like crystal does. Crystal builds in a radiant field or a radiation field the exact same way. You have to use the lessons of the earth that is teaching you in order to build this. You want time dilation in this thing? It's not hard. You're creating the two fields that hold in the time dilation right there. Those two fields, running them depending on which way you're running the vortex up and down first, okay, is depending on which way you're going to go in your time dilation field. You could speed it up. You could slow it down. You could run it super fast by putting more energy in there in one direction, or you could just keep it neutral. It really depends on you. So when it comes down to it, all this stuff is very simple. You can create 0-point energy, time dilation, and you can make an anti-gravity field bubble, all in one device.
Yeah, it's definitely true, and I believe there's more than a few that have all designed different ways and done it, and you know that there's many like you that are well on their way, and that so what everything you've described and everything I've described, just to like sum up, like because we're gonna have to do like a 5-part series with everything I experienced and saw, and like a breakdown of the Keshi stuff. But a key part was like the whole crystal woo and like plasma conscious woo, and that what I actually read, and I only read this post once, and it was by the last of the 6 groups that were like the real different groups that like. It was like right when Zoom had come out. It was right when Takeshi had come out. And like I made it onto these 6 different groups that actually got the system working. And like I saw it, and it's like they had legit free energy. They had fucking glowing fucking blue plasma fields all around their houses. And they were all like eating off of it, not having to sleep. And like a couple of them were like government things that like disappeared to the fucking dark side, like in the holes, and like one claimed like literally the one that was like just some dude that really figured it out, and I think he was from Asia, and like he taught a whole bunch of us. Like he made this one series of like a way more advanced and simple one, and like the videos got like deleted the next day. And like, there's a couple out there that I've like recently found that like just have like a couple hundred views that I've been meaning to like do a whole try to make the system and stuff. But like, literally, it was like I had watched him like be like on the run because the government was coming after him because like he had done like the breakthrough was too crazy, and then like he had made there was rumors. He was last seen on the dark, like passing the moon. And then it was like, apparently he made contact with like the one hippie group that had kind of like, was also like getting it. And like, that, anyways, apparently was past the moon, like was on, I don't know, made a moon ship or something. And then I totally forgot what I was going to say. And it was the hippie group. I think who did I originally read? Oh yeah, hippie group. And that this chick had made this post once, and it was the last post I ever saw her make, and then she got expunged from the internet too. Like each one of these groups, like they got expunged, like just nothing ever seen of it since, and like it was crazy, and like make of it what you will. I don't know, but she made the post that you put a crystal in the solenoid that then connects to your freaking actual power sources out before going into. And so this is like the standards. Actually, sorry, this is not standard. I made the geometry is different. They're all supposed to be the same, of like 81 and 144 wraps per. And it's coil within coil within coil, and they were nano coated, but this is rather old, so the nano coating is broken down a lot. Need to do a new coating, but so you have the 6 coils and the field within the field within the field, and they're all wired to the fields. It's not your standard wiring whatsoever, and there's 3 different flows.
And this whole thing goes in water?
That's what I've been doing, which is completely different than what they were doing, and where I've advanced all sorts of different ways. But the whole point was when you put the crystal in, before connecting it to actual power source that powered the freaking thing. Oh, I forgot. The water and the monoatomics are actually in the centers, and so you have it stacked, and you have one type of monoatomic in this one in water, one type of monoatomic in this one in water, one type of monoatomic in this one in water. And then these are connected to a bunch of different capacitors, another circuit, and like one end to the grid and one to where you're using your electricity. And that's then when you'd add some more stuff, these things would like generate a giant blue field if they done right with ones that I saw. Oh, there was one group in Vancouver that was doing it. Once they made the space coils, they had a freaking blue. I watched 2 of their live demos. One when they first set it off in the park, and the whole park fucking had a giant blue glowing plasma field. And then the one time she did it around, it was around his house when he had this thing set up and running for a week and really got it going, and like a blue glow was around his house. And then like they posted like the RCMP were coming, and never saw what happened to that guy. Anyways, there's some crazy. Then all right. I guess I'm giving all of the crazy ones.
Disappearing, yeah.
And then the last one was a group in Texas, and they got the blue glowing thing around their workshop. And it was like once they had this thing set up and going, it was like they had the electric field beeper, and it was like first it was just like a couple feet, and then like as it got going, it was like they had the ladder, and it was like through the stairs, and then it was like on the roof, and it was just crazy how far it was going. And then they had the blue glowing freaking field around the place, and then don't know what happened. I think that so 2 or 3 of those groups actually like became part of like the private Cushy thing, and like it was all private within the groups. And then it was like the 3 others that were like separate government or just like random people. Well, the one guy apparently was on the moon or past the moon or whatever the hell. There's other dudes that were like, I'm not going to get all into it tonight because this is freaking too wild.
Can I say something to you, Bernie?
Yeah.
Just so you understand this. If you take the Tesla coil outside and you run the rod down the center of it, and it's a cold morning, run your finger along that wire that comes from that rod, and it creates blue plasma. Now, it's important that you know that, because putting the crystal inside of the magnetic field is pinching it all to the center of that crystal, which should create your blue plasma. Every time that you're putting the coils on the outside and the source or what you want to it on the inside, you're forcing the energy into a negative state. Now, Tesla made X-rays that were not harmful using the negative state of radiant energy in order to do it, not the positive like we use today. So it's a non-destructive energy. That's why they can sit in the room while it's blue and glowing and not be hurt. But if you try to create that in a positive energy field, you're absolutely going to hurt.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense there. And that's the difference. I can make the difference between the 2 and the 2 fields. The cold is your ultraviolet, the low end of the spectrum where you're going smaller. The hot is infrared, and that's the other end of our visible spectrum, and that's the energy going the other way, right? And
That's why you call it hot and cold, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And it's just compression, decompression of energy to matter and matter to energy back and forth and through space time.
Hey, it's a fun one. Let's tell you, I know you're probably getting towards the end of this, but Bob Boyce, if you ever watch it, Structured Water, the energy smacker that he creates is basically a Tesla with a rod down the center, and then he puts it into the water and it structures the water. One of the coolest things that he talks about is he takes that structured water, puts it in the fridge next to a glass of orange juice, and then as it sits there, it has a vortex pulled to it. So it's going to take that flavor from the orange juice and transmit it right into the water, and you're going to get the flavor of it.
So literally had like 5 different people that did like the Keshi stuff that went into that aspect of the fields and food stuff, and all claimed to have that exact same result when they were doing that. Their method, the Keshi method of it, was like pretty exact similar to what you described there of how they're actually like the structured water. It's how you structure the water, but it's just structuring. The difference between the two is the method of structuring water. It structures that actual water, and you literally get the smell and the taste of the orange field from the water field because you structured it in, and like the aroma of orange off of this water that is actually never physically touched an orange. It's crazy, and it's like it would get more.
Okay, so let me ask you this then: if I wanted to turn water into wine, what would be my first thing I would look at?
The field,
the smacker field that they're creating in order to turn the water into wine. They never said if the color changed. He just says it basically tastes like wine and is like wine. How do you get it? Just like that.
So I just want to put those up again because it's like these are some very basic but essentials of there's the right hand rule, but like you said, the left hand rule, and it's the compression, decompression, back and forth. And this is Walter Russell's, and it's just one of the many, many different dimensional geometric fields.
It's a spring. It's a spring, Bernie. Longitudinal wave is a spring. It's put it straight up in the air, and you'll see it as a spring. It's multiple springs. It's just bing, 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 bing.
Exactly. So that it's what it is, and then what's so fascinating and why it's so relevant to me, and what I've been describing is because as I watched the Keshi development of the coils and the fields, it's like there would be the center wire. And then for the space field ones, it was like you'd make like 100 or so, I think 82 of exactly this, like that, around the center big field coil that is like the larger coil field. And then around these, you'd have a secondary coil also going with around back and forth and back and forth. And that you'd have arrays of coils like that, and then you'd have them nano coated, and then there was like 3 of those fields within them. So it's like it got so complex and wild. But yes, they started to glow, and they it was pretty wild. Anyways,
are they different? Are they both copper, or are they different material?
So. Yes and no. First, they did with just copper, right? And that's one thing. But no, that's a key part of the difference between the inner one, the outer one, and the middle one. And like I was saying, it's like you want.
Okay, so hold on. So the gold has no ohms in a coil.
Yeah.
There's no resistance. But if you take a copper field and a, say, aluminum field, now you have a battery. 2 copper fields.
Exactly. Okay, you just broke it down exactly to what is the best. That is the ultimate one, and it's just which field is which and how much gold you can afford, and that those are the 3 differentials, and that you want the highest differential between the 2 and the middle one, and that's batteries, that's everything. It's electric. It's like it's the basics of all energy exchange and field exchange, and yes, uh, that's exactly it. And
There's your positive, negative, and neutral you were looking for.
what you just described would be the 3 metals I would make my coil system out of when I can afford to do so with that much gold. And it's exactly that.
Pretty interesting. That's all this stuff kind of works together in the same way.
Exactly, and it's field and plasma, like forces, interactions, and pressure differentials.
But just remember, you're doing a cold plasma, so it's a little different. It's not harmful as a hot plasma would be. You can't put your finger next to hot plasma. It just burns everything down. There's too much heat.
Okay. That's radiation energy fields relevance, and a little bit of my misunderstanding and why I kept thinking earlier I was talking about how like the big field of the terahertz, but no, that's okay. So that is the hot radiation one that you don't need. So you just don't.
Hold on. Terahertz is fine. That's a high frequency, so you have a high voltage and you have a low amperage.
No. I'm talking about though that you have in the giant plasma fields, because then it will like destroy you, not just your plasma field, but your physical thing, because it's so hard. But
that would be a very low frequency, and it would suck to be in that field.
Yes,
a very high amperage field.
Anyways, I'm not gonna go further into trying to explain what I'm trying to make sense of in my head right now, but just what you were explaining affected it a lot. And please go back to what you were saying about that. The radiation, or the hot plasma field. It's like, as long as you don't, so the hot plasma field, as long as that is not, ringing on the same as time that you have your human like plasma field amplified at the field level and those interactions, if that makes sense. But like that's
I keep asking
technology is nothing like that right now. It's just something.
I keep asking you about water for a reason. Okay, now go with me here with the little cymatics, right? Put a speaker underneath a tin of water. Makes a frequency into it.
Okay.
It's in water that it makes that frequency. Your body is 70% water. You got to speak to things on their own level. I mean, there's no other way to say that. That's why I keep asking you if you're putting the coil in water or not, because it's a conduit.
Oh, yes. And so when I say no, it's just for the specific engineering aspects of what I was asking. But now that you've explained what you've explained, I will never need to think about that sort of thing again, because everything that I'm making is in water, and that therefore it's like that is the base, and then it's like it's good, and it has nothing like okay. So it's like and yes.
That's why they have the fundamental states. The water, the earth, the heat, all that stuff. When they do those little things, it's not just a guy sitting there. You know what I mean? They tell you different states of things for a reason, because if I told you to put the water there, you get one look out of it, right? But then if I told you to take a flat plate and put it over the speaker and put salt on it, it'd be a completely different look, right? But that's the way that it builds out in the different states between the earth and between the water state. The fire state would be, a different frequency look altogether. Now, you put them all together, you get a mandala. You get what they're trying to tell you there, that there's different states of the energy, different way it builds out, and there's a wiring pattern in every mandala. Every time that you see the angels on the outside, just count them out. That's the amount of pins that you put for your coil. Now all you have to do is take the circles in the center that they create and play stay away from the center. So you cannot cross the line for that one that you're in, and you'll build out a geometry coil. It's that simple, and you'll get those frequency patterns out of it. There's a lot more to geometry than they think it is, man.
Right? There's so much, and you get one beautiful kaleidoscope of it, and I'm looking at it from a whole other beautiful kaleidoscope of it, and
That's
it's
right.
us engineering these things together that it's gonna rebuild.
It all builds on the whole thing together, Bernie. You can't do it without the other. It's
exactly
every has to be brought into it.
And it's that the ancients got it and understood it and developed it or used it on a massive level that we just don't even fully comprehend yet.
Yeah, everything works on. It's like taking a safe, and every combination that you put into that safe is going to unlock certain things. That's how fundamental frequency works. How many points do you have to hit, and in which order? That's it. It's a safe lock. Once you get it, you can control anything you want.
So, in my mind, the big thing that I've been I gotta recollect this thought. It's the engineering between what connecting the digital electronic technology and systems and microsystems that we have today into both the cold electrical engineering system side and technology, as well as the plasma side. And it's they're three completely different there's three sides of the energy electrical component engineering that are the exact same, and then each one has something that's completely different. I'm probably not going to make a lot of sense to people right now, but anyways, please. Any last words? I guess we're getting 3 hours. It's 1:30. I got to get to bed soon because I work in the morning. This was fun. We got to do it again. And what do you got on the go tomorrow? And the rest of the year, you were saying you have a few shows.
Yeah, tomorrow we got some pre-tape stuff going to go on. I'm gonna meet with some people who want to be on the show, and we'll talk to them and see how that goes. And then we also have Liz. She's going to come in and she's going to talk about us with Atlantis. And she had a previous life in Atlantis that she said lasted 15,000 years. So we're going to go with her and see exactly where, vibrational frequency. She talks about it a lot and how it was used in their technology. So we're going to go right down that road with her. We're going to find out how they lived and the way they thought about things, so we can understand why the society either collapsed or succeeded in certain ways, or if they're in Middle Earth, or are they, roaming around with us. So I find it absolutely fascinating to go down that road.
Me too, brother. So what time is that? I'm going to have to try to tune in and watch the premiere.
Well, that one, we're going to pre-tape that one, and then it's going to air.
Filming tomorrow. So
yeah.
be okay. I look forward to what. Well, it's good. I don't have to worry about it. I can focus on work tomorrow, and I look forward to watching it when it's premiered. And anything you're saying this Thursday or Friday, you're doing some stuff.
Yeah, then we have Sean on Wednesday, and then we're going to see how the rest of the week pans out. And there's a couple people, like I said, want to come on, and if they want to show their stuff, they're always welcome to. And we'll just take the courtesy and let them present everything they got, man. And I think it's great open for builders out there who want to come in and show stuff, man. And they all have been winners, man. Every single one of them to come in. We just had Inventor 3 in, and he was talking John Hutchinson and some of the stuff that was going on there, man. I was just like a trip down memory lane, man. John even commented on it and said, he missed talking to Inventor 3, which is his machinist that John used to go to make everything. So that was pretty cool. We also had Nick on, man, who's doing the Corona motor. So we were talking energy in the sky, energy in the ground. So,
I'm gonna need to watch that and maybe even jump in at the end to ask a couple questions if possible.
Yeah, and then I'm hoping, we can put a couple of the guys together and work on it, man. So some of the stuff, they need to just be connected. And, if that's what I can do for them, that's what I'll do. And then they can just, hash it out while I'm sitting there in the background smiling because they got all the information. So That's what's going on, man.
That's amazing. That's what I'm all about. That's what I try to do. And as do you. And I'm glad to see it continuing. So, awesome, my friend. Pleasure talking with you, and we will talk again, very soon. And I guess everyone have a good night.
Right on. Thank you for having me on.
And thanks for being here, brother. Do this again soon. Bye.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just burning. Burning just like last week, huh?
Weekend at Bernie's.